Are they offended by the gospel, or are they offended by the way we present the gospel? In Luke chapter 11, Jesus is getting ready to send out his disciples into the cities where he himself intended to go and preach. And he warns them of two possible outcomes of their preaching. In verse 10, he says, "But whenever you enter a town and they do not receive you, go into the streets and say, even the dust of your town that clings to our feet, we wipe off against you. Nevertheless, know this, the kingdom of God has come near." And the other alternative, up in verse 8, "Whenever you enter a town and they receive you, eat what is set before you, heal the sick, and say to them, the kingdom of God has come near to you." In the towns that received them, they were to say, the kingdom of God has come near you, has come near. In the towns where people didn't receive them, they were to preach, the kingdom of God has come near. They were to preach the same gospel. They were to share the same news in each of those towns. But some of those people would receive and some of those people would not receive. So as we share the gospel, we will run into unreceptive people. But if we look far enough, we will run into receptive people. I remember when I was just a young man, just 18, I participated in a mission trip to Iowa. And we were doing a backyard Bible club, kind of a VBS in a park. We ran out of supplies, so they sent me with this evangelist who was a part of their church planting team to go and to buy things in a store. As we were standing in line there, he was talking about the need to share the gospel and how he tried to use every opportunity. I thought, well, this is great. I'm ready to learn about this. As we approached the cashier, he pulled out his money to pay, but he also pulled out a little booklet. I thought, well, this is great. He's always prepared to share the gospel. As she rang us up, and there wasn't a checkout person there, a person who would bag our stuff, so I sat there and bagged it up. And as he was getting ready to pay, he didn't just pay, but he pulled out the booklet, and I thought, oh, this will be nice. He'll say a nice word. He'll hand it to her. He'll leave the door open. No. He opened the first page and started to read through this multi-page booklet as this young girl sat there, and she's looking at him and she's looking at the other people in line. You can tell she's getting very nervous because she's thinking, my boss, my manager could come up, I could get fired. And then finally she just said in a very timid voice, "Sir, could you just leave your booklet and I'll read it later, but I have a lot of other people in line here that I need to check out as well." He closed the booklet in a huff, put it back in his pocket, and walked out. And as we were exiting the doors, he said, "See, some people just don't want to hear the gospel." As we walked back to the park, I thought to myself, I'm not so sure she was closed to the gospel as she was closed to his method and his timing of presenting the gospel. We will encounter people who are open, and we will encounter people who are closed. But we need to make sure that we don't just write people off automatically saying, oh, they just don't want to hear the gospel. We need to stop and really make room for the possibility that their resistance is not so much to the gospel, or not just to the gospel, but may also be to the way that we are sharing the gospel. So, yes, we need to take that good news of the kingdom out, and we need to share as Jesus' disciples did. And some will hear, and some will not. But Paul said that he became all things to all men in the 9th chapter of 1 Corinthians, that he might save at least some. We need to be ready to change our methods. We need to be willing to change our approaches to remove as many barriers to people hearing the gospel as possible. Because we want it to be the fact that if they don't hear us, it's because they don't want to hear the gospel, not because they object to our method.